of the day. When you get an opportunity in this game, you make a play. The playmakers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Touchdown, Kansas City! The Chiefs are right in the thick of it, baby! And hello, Chiefs Kingdom, and welcome to this special edition of Defending the Kingdom. Mitch Holthus with you, voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen. It's the schedule revealing of the 2022 schedule just released, and this is our reaction. We wanted to get to you as quick as we can, but first of all, congratulations on your promotion.
Yeah, thank you very much. It feels good. I'm no longer the middle-aged team reporter, so I'll take what I can get. But yeah, thank you very much, Mitch.
Well deserved. The other thing is I'm going to take my passport and put it back in my backpack because normally we go around the world on Defending the Kingdom. Not tonight.
Not tonight. This is a very big deal. Of course, we're breaking the schedule right now, so still let us know where you're watching and listening from. We'll mention it on our next episode. But for this one, we're packing it in tonight. We'll do double duty whenever we broadcast next.
Okay, before we do the deep dive into this schedule, let's just review this 2022 National Football League schedule. By the way, the Chiefs have the fifth toughest schedule according to the 2021 results in the entire National Football League. All right, here we go. Let's just take a look. The Chiefs will open the season where they would like to close the season. They will open at Arizona to take on the Cardinals on September the 11th, 3:25 kickoff. Of course, Super Bowl 57 is going to be in that same locale. Then, Thursday Night Football. The Chiefs will open at home at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium on the following Thursday night against the Los Angeles Chargers. Then on the 25th, the Chiefs will go on the road to take on the Indianapolis Colts. That'll be one of the few noon games the Chiefs have all season long. Let's go into October. October 2nd, the reason the Chiefs probably aren't going to Germany this year, they are playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa, Sunday Night Football, Mahomes versus Brady. October the 10th, Monday Night Football at Arrowhead, GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium against the Raiders. That'll be Monday Night Football, October the 10th. October the 16th, home against the Buffalo Bills. The rematch of that incredible divisional playoff game from a year ago and, of course, the AFC Championship game of 2 years ago. October 23rd, the Chiefs will go to San Francisco. A rematch of Super Bowl 54, this time on the home turf of the 49ers. That's a 3:25 start. The bye week. 7 games, bye the next 9, or next 10, I should say. And here are the next 10.
Used to be 9.
Used to be 9, sorry, old habits. November the 6th, the Chiefs are back in prime time at home against the Titans on Sunday Night Football on November the 6th. November the 13th, a rare home noon game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. On November the 20th, on the road against the Chargers. Remember the walk-off last year by Travis Kelce. They'll take on the Chargers at 3:25. Then the 27th, the Chiefs will be at home against the defending Super Bowl champion Rams. That'll be 3:25 at Arrowhead. Into December, at the Bengals. Rematch of the AFC Championship game of a year ago. This time back in Cincinnati where the Chiefs lost in January of a year ago against the Bengals, 3:25. Then the 11th of December, finally, the Denver Broncos show up on the schedule. The Broncos at Denver. That'll be Sunday Night Football in Denver on the 11th. On the 18th, at Houston. That will be a noon game against the Texans. Christmas Eve is a Saturday this year. The Chiefs will play on Saturday, Christmas Eve, at noon against the Seattle Seahawks at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. New Year's Day. Hopefully you won't be up all night New Year's Eve because you'll need to be ready to go Sunday at noon against the Denver Broncos on New Year's Day, the first day of 2023. And then the following week could be Saturday. It could be Sunday. The Chiefs will go on the road to take on the Raiders. That time is also to be announced. There you go. Okay, when you break this down, Matt, to get your thoughts here, it's mentioned the fifth toughest schedule in the National Football League based off 2021 results. 3 of the first 4 are on the road. 3 of the first 5 are in prime time. You can only have 6 primetime games. The Chiefs have 3 in the first 5 weeks.
Well, first, take a breath. That was a lot. I think you killed it there. 17 games, a lot to go through, and a lot of good teams, as you mentioned. 5th toughest schedule in the NFL based on last year's records, which is always kind of misleading. I mean, it doesn't factor in that the Broncos have a new quarterback, right? We expect the Broncos to be better this year, so it's a tough schedule, no doubt. The good news for the Chiefs is that they're used to this kind of thing. This will be the 6th year in a row the Chiefs have played a first-place schedule, and all they've done every single year is be up to that challenge and win the division over and over and over again. I think what's interesting this year is there's a lot of AFC challengers that we'll talk about later on that maybe aren't so used to that. I'm thinking about the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they played a 4th-place schedule last year. They're playing a 1st-place schedule this year and have, let's see, the number 3 overall schedule in terms of difficulty. The Raiders also factor into that, 7th hardest schedule in the NFL this year. So, yes, a very difficult schedule for the Chiefs, as always, but the good news is they've been here before, and time again, they've been up to that challenge.
Yeah, to your point, and people say, gosh, 3 of the first 4 are on the road, 2018 and 2019. 3 of the first 4 were on the road. Chiefs still made it to the AFC Championship in 18. They won the whole shebang in 19. Some would say, gosh, a lot of primetime games. Well, the Chiefs have been on primetime a lot here recently, and there's 2 more primetime games, as I mentioned, coming up later in the schedule. So the Chiefs, and to your point again, have been in this realm before. So instead of looking at it down the line from a chronological standpoint, which is common to do, let's look at it the way I think Coach Reid would look at it, and that is your division opponents. The Kansas City Chiefs, let's review here, and we say this humbly, knowing that the AFC West, by consensus around those that cover the National Football League, will be the toughest division in the league this year. The Chiefs against the division over the past 6 seasons, 31 wins and 5 losses. 31 wins and 5 losses. When you look at the division and the way the Chiefs are stacking up against this schedule, it's right out of the gate against the Chargers Thursday Night Football at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium.
Now, what's interesting, though, is in the past several years, we've seen how the league has bunched a lot of these games up toward the end. So while we play the Chargers in Week 2, that's one of only 2 divisional games in the first 10 weeks of the season. It makes those even more important, I think. But then 4 divisional games over the final 8 weeks. So we'll see what the records are like toward the end of the season, but it really could come down to those final 8 weeks and those big divisional games. That's what happened last year for the Chiefs, and they took care of business time and time again with all those divisional games in the latter half of the season. I do think, though, with that Week 2 game, that's a tone setter kind of game. And I know the Chiefs last year, you lose in Week 3 to the Chargers, and it kind of felt like for a while it was always trying to make up that ground. Winning in Week 2 here at home against the Chargers in primetime would go a long way in kind of setting the tone early on, so the Chargers are chasing us and not the other way around.
Well, and let's just get we'll get ahead of the narrative here, because the narrative will be the Chargers have won 3 of the last 4 games in Kansas City, includes a Thursday night walk-off with a 2-point conversion in 2018. Now, the 2020 game, the Chiefs played the JVs. They
doesn't count.
Put that asterisk up there, too.
Doesn't count.
But the point is that's going to be a lot of the narrative going into this game for the Chiefs in their home opener. But you mentioned the league loves to, and look at the drama last year in the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season, not just in the AFC West, but throughout all of the divisions of both the AFC and NFC, is to backload them. I think what the league is thinking here, Matt, is the fans can't wait that long. They want to watch the AFC West in prime time every week. And when you look at the way the schedule is meted out, not just the Thursday night game to open the season, Monday Night Football in October, home against the Raiders. So another primetime game. Coming back November the 20th at the Chargers. And then the backload of the games. But the Chiefs do not play the Denver Broncos until December the 11th, the first time the Chiefs will see Denver.
It's crazy because I think everyone's talking about what a great matchup that's going to be with Russell Wilson. We'll see kind of how he fits into Denver and how things are going there with him. It might take a little while, but everyone's excited about that matchup, but we have to wait all the way until December to see it. I'm really curious how Denver is going to look this season. Of course, plugging in a new quarterback, it's not all going to work great right away, I don't think, but they're certainly better, and at that point we'll know if they're contending for the division. So the Chiefs will need to take care of business in December. But one thing I'm glad about, Mitch, when we're talking about these divisional matchups, is it is so difficult to do what the Chiefs did last year, which is go in primetime on the road on a Thursday night in a game you have to win against the Chargers like the Chiefs did last season. They won, and it was awesome. But I think we're very fortunate this year that game is early in the season and at home, so you're not having that short week when you have to go on the road and it's late in the year, so you're already beaten up and win a game against a very hungry opponent. I think we're very fortunate in that way. The scheduling gods did us good on that one. I'm so glad the Thursday game is very early on, and it's here in Kansas City.
And 2 of the 5 division losses have been late in the season Thursday night games. 2017, it was the game against the Raiders, right? The redo of the 1972 Olympic game where you're just going to keep doing it until the Raiders win. And then 2 was the Charger walk-off, a 2-point conversion. One thing that you and I have been doing, though, the last couple of days, even before we saw the schedule release, because we talk about everybody pointing against the Chiefs, shooting for the Chiefs. They're sick of the Chiefs winning 6 straight AFC West titles. There's a lot of work to do by these 3 division opponents themselves, regardless of the Chiefs. Let's take the Broncos here. The Broncos, you're thinking, well, okay, they've not made the playoffs since 2015 when they won Super Bowl 50. But they've drawn Baltimore here. They have to go to Baltimore on the road, and nobody's talking about the Ravens anymore, and that could be a big mistake.
So when you look at the scheduling and how it works, when you finish in 4th place, that means you have a 4th place schedule, and you're going to play the other teams in the AFC that finished in 4th place. Usually that creates parity because you're playing not a very good team, right? But the Ravens are the ultimate surprise there, and they're unique in this way because they were 8-1 at one point last season, even though half their roster was hurt, and eventually the wheels fell off when Lamar Jackson got hurt and all that happened. But they're going to be healthy with a lot of talent, and they still have Lamar Jackson in a contract year. They're going to be really good this season, or at least very competitive. I mean, fighting for the playoffs. So if you're the Broncos and you're like, woohoo, we have a 4th place schedule, you're still playing the Ravens on the road. They have to go to L.A. to play the Rams, go to Tennessee to play the Titans, and then, a tough home slate as well. A lot of teams the Chiefs are playing, like the Cardinals, the Colts, the 49ers. So that's going to be difficult. They also travel 27,000 miles next season. It's the second most of any team. They play a London game. That's against the Jaguars, and we'll see how Jacksonville looks this season. But still not easy when you're traveling around that much. So, we'll see. It's a tough road for them.
Well, let me give you another one at Seattle. So we don't know what Seattle's going to be like, who's going to be quarterbacking Seattle. But they have to go to – so Russ Wilson, who's only one of 5 quarterbacks in NFL history to win 100 games, and then go back and play that team in the next season, this is where it gets kind of fun for a Chiefs fan. Another one of the 5, Joe Montana. When he was the Chiefs quarterback, had over 100 wins with the 49ers, and then had to play the 49ers the very next year. Same thing with Russ Wilson. If you don't think the Seahawks and the 12 are going to be on point for that game, I mean, the Broncos will be walking into a cauldron for that game, no matter who's playing quarterback for Seattle.
Well, and it could be Drew Lock, right?
Could
be Drew Lock, of course, former
crazy.
Broncos quarterback, and I'm sure he'll go into that one wanting some revenge as well.
The Raiders also have a lot of work to do, regardless of playing the Chiefs. We know about the Chiefs have a lot of work to do. It's the way we started this podcast. But the Raiders, they have to go to Pittsburgh. Okay, the Chiefs have a tough in the 1-1 matchup against the other 2 AFC divisions. But here are the Raiders going to Pittsburgh. They will go to the Rams. The Rams come to GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. But you mentioned the Broncos go to the Rams. So do the Raiders. They also have New England, and then they have to go to New Orleans in the NFC crossover extra game. So it's not like the Raiders don't have a lot of work to do here as well.
And it's the downside of them making the playoffs last year. That was great for them, and they had that awesome game against the Chargers at home where they won and they went to the playoffs and the Chargers didn't. But it means that when your schedule comes out, you now are playing a second-place schedule, and we're seeing that here. They made a lot of big acquisitions. We know that, but they're going to be tested early on in this one. And again, when there's so many good teams in the AFC, they're going to beat up on one another. And I'm curious to see how the division plays out in that way, too, because they're going to have to play the Chargers twice, obviously, and us twice, and the Broncos twice. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Raiders, but not an easy road for them either. A lot of good teams on this schedule. And again, playing the NFC West, like the whole AFC West is, you're playing the Cardinals, the 49ers. You mentioned the Seahawks. We'll see how they look this season, and the Rams. It's tough.
The Chargers here probably have the most advantageous schedule if you look at it, but they still have the game against the Rams, which I believe is their home game. Well, it's their home game against a team playing at home. It would be the Chiefs sharing the stadium with another Kansas City team, so it feels like you're forfeiting a home game by playing a team that's also had that same home venue. They have to go to the Falcons and crossing over here, but the Chargers, who many think will be the AFC champions, AFC West champions, AFC champions too, in the 2022 season, maybe don't have some of the landmines that the other 3 division teams have in the schedule.
And they're also going to Cleveland to play the Browns. The Browns are one of the biggest wild cards, I think, of this entire season. We're really just not sure what to expect from them. But if they're playing well, it's a tough draw for the Chargers on the road. We haven't seen the Chargers go into a season where they're expected to do well and they do it the entire way. And I think that will be really the mandate for the Chargers this year from their fan base is, can you do it the entire season? We haven't seen that yet. We'll see what happens. But that's where looking at games and opponents this far in advance is kind of tough, because look at some of the games the Chargers lost last year. They lose to the Texans on the road. So you just really never know. But even though it's probably the easiest, relatively speaking, of the divisional teams, it's still tough. A lot of good teams on here.
Don't want to give them cannon fodder or bulletin board material, but still, Justin Herbert, really good quarterback. We know that. But he's only one of 4 quarterbacks in NFL history to have his touchdown totals in his first 2 years and not make the playoffs. So they still have to get it done. So bring it on in the AFC West. Now, also when we look at the schedule, we've shown you the Chiefs schedule here, but let's go into the expected AFC challengers, who the Chiefs play. So let's focus here on the Bills, the Bengals, and the Titans. Keep in mind the Chiefs will play the Buffalo Bills. That is going to be a 3:25 game on October the 16th. The Buffalo Bills, they will play, get this, each of the last 3 MVPs in the National Football League. That's on the Bills' schedule. They will also play the last 2 Defensive Players of the Year. They'll play the Rams and Aaron Donald. They will play T.J. Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So here are the Bills. But, of course, they're going to play Baltimore. They have Baltimore and Pittsburgh. They come here, they go to Cincinnati, and they go to the Rams. The Bills have got a lot on their plate as well.
Yeah, it's a tough run. It's similar to the Chiefs, where the Bills now have had success for a couple of years, and they're going to draw a lot of good teams. You have to play all these good teams to prove that you can stay up there at the top, and it's going to be a rough road for them. Drawing the AFC North is hard, because really the AFC North, top to bottom, you can say all of those teams could conceivably make the playoffs. So that's tough.
But haven't you had the feeling that division's going, well, hey, what about us? Because all this AFC West talk?
Sure.
Don't you think the AFC North teams are going, what do you think we are?
Well, I do think there's question marks in the AFC North. Like, what's Pittsburgh going to be with Mitch Trubisky? I don't know. Does Kenny Pickett ever play for them this year? I don't know. And then also the Ravens, we talked about them. They're going to be better this season. The Bengals coming off their year last year. But the Browns, what are the Browns going to be this season? I don't know. But I do think they're a tough draw looking at paper. That entire division is hard if you're the Buffalo Bills. For the Chiefs, I'm glad that game is at home. The Bills, they're trying to beat the Chiefs. They've been building their roster to do that for years now. The Chiefs have been the one roadblock for them to get to the Super Bowl in 2 consecutive years. Of course, in February and January is when it really matters. They beat the Chiefs last year, and that ended up not mattering at all. But for the Chiefs, of course, you want to maintain that dominance in the AFC. You want to beat the Bills here at home. So I'm glad that game is at home, and it should be a great game. It's never a quiet game when the Chiefs and Bills play.
No. You look at it, the scoring has been crazy. The Bills have had almost 100 points. The Chiefs have had 114 points, I think, in those last 4 games, because they've met 4 times in the last 3 seasons. The other challenger here, the Bengals. All right, that's still stuck in the craw of the Chiefs' kingdom, of course, that AFC Championship loss. But the Bengals, and you alluded to this earlier, the toughest schedule in the AFC, 3rd toughest in the entire National Football League. They're going to play 7 of the 8 top scoring defenses of the NFL a year ago. And usually defense will carry over from year to year. You mentioned it's rough to say, hey, the toughest schedule based on 20, but defenses are usually, that will carry over year to year. And then they'll each take on each of the top 4 scoring offenses from a year ago. They go to Tennessee. That will be a revenge game for the Titans. They have Buffalo at home. They have to go to the Bucs, just like the Chiefs do, and then they go to Dallas. Cincinnati has got maybe a tougher schedule than the Chiefs do.
They have to go to New England as well, and we'll see what the Patriots look like this year, but the Patriots are formidable. It's tough, and this is the reward for being a surprise first-place finisher, is all of a sudden you have to play a lot of good teams. For me, and I think for most of Chiefs Kingdom, if you think about last year, the Chiefs lost to just 1 team following late October. It was twice to the Cincinnati Bengals, both with a ton on the line. We lose the number 1 seed in the AFC because of the Bengals, and we lose a chance at going to our 3rd consecutive Super Bowl because of the Bengals. So for me personally, and I think a lot of people, this one is circled, I'm looking forward to this game.
And then the Titans. There's also some uncertainty about the Titans. Of course, the trade of A.J. Brown and others, but Tannehill's still there. The Tennessee Titans, when you look at the challenge that they've got, same. And we mentioned Tennessee cross-scheduling against these other contenders that we've got. We don't know about Tennessee's division. Will Indianapolis return? We know that Jacksonville and Houston are still in the rebuilding mode. But here are the Titans coming back to Kansas City. And that game with the Titans will be on November the 6th. But the NFL thinks enough of this game with the Titans and Chiefs that it'll be another Sunday night football game.
And the best part of this one is it's after the bye. We know how good Coach Reid is after the bye. It's legendary. The guy never loses when he has an extra week to prepare. So having that extra week to prepare for a pretty good team in the Tennessee Titans is really big, I think. Like you said, though, I'm really curious to see just how the Titans look this year with no A.J. Brown. I mean, last year we got A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, all these weapons. They have some good players, traded for Robert Woods at receiver and drafted Treylon Burks in the first round, but it's just not quite the same feel. So it'll still be a really big game. They're a really good team. We'll know at that point how they're doing in the season, but I'm glad it's after the bye. I'll add one more team, too, to this list. It's the Colts. We'll see what the Colts look like this season, but we play them in Week 3, and I think that's advantageous for the Chiefs because with a new quarterback and Matt Ryan, that's a team that could really be cooking by like Week 8 when Ryan's kind of familiar with his offensive line and his receivers and everyone, but by Week 3, maybe it's still kind of new for him. So I think it's a big deal that we're playing the Colts in Week 3.
It's an awesome point by you, Matt, because I really put the Colts on a linear path with the Ravens. We're not talking about them anymore and should be. You look at the rest of that Colts roster, that's a strong group. And we know what Chris Ballard and Frank Reich can do with that bunch. So don't sleep on the Colts at all when you're talking about AFC contenders, and they're just not getting a lot of love here, nor are the Ravens. Okay. Now, we have looked at the Chiefs' overall schedule. We kind of gave you the thoughts of looking at that schedule. Then we have gone through the AFC West opponents, not just when the Chiefs play them, but what they have on their plate, a lot. We've looked at the expected AFC challengers. Now I'm going to go where we like to go on defending the kingdom, which is beyond the obvious. I mentioned this a year ago, and I've tried to bring it up from time to time, because when the Chiefs or any AFC team plays an NFC team, they go, oh, it's just down the list. It's not part of tiebreakers. It's like the sixth thing down. Stop it. The Chiefs in the last 25 games against the NFC are 19-6. The Chiefs are 12-1 the past 3 seasons against the NFC. 12-1. You can argue the past 3 years, the tipping point, yes, the Chiefs have dominated the AFC West, but they have challengers. They've had challengers. Every one of this run of winning 6 straight division championships. The Raiders challenged them in 16. The Chargers have challenged them. The Broncos, not as much, but they've been sitting right there. It has been beating the NFC teams, and not just beating them, Matt, but dominating the NFC with 12 of the last 13 wins over the NFC crossover games. It starts with Arizona on September the 11th, so you're talking about a tone setter, and then what many think will be the biggest game in the NFL all year, and that's Sunday Night Football at Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers, Brady against Mahomes on October the 2nd.
And I have more stats for you because it truly is remarkable what the Chiefs have done against the NFC since Coach Reid got here. And it shouldn't be a surprise because Coach Reid was originally an NFC guy. He knows these teams well. So since he got here in 2013, the Chiefs are 26-11 against the NFC. Best record for any AFC team against the NFC. And get this. So you mentioned the last 3 years. I'm going to go back to 2018. So the Patrick Mahomes era. The Chiefs are 14-3 against the NFC. That's the best of any AFC team. And the Detroit Lions. The Chiefs have more victories since 2018 against the NFC than the Detroit Lions, which I think is just crazy.
And that's only 5 games now. It's been 5-5 and 4-4-4. But you can argue, if you sit down and look at the last 6 years, it has been the Chiefs' dominance over the NFC in these crossover, cross-pollination games, I call it, that have put the Chiefs basically over the line to win division opponents. The other games, October the 23rd at San Francisco, the Super Bowl 54 rematch. And then down the stretch, you look at the home game against the Rams in November, later, Thanksgiving time, and then the game in December, a noon game on Christmas Eve at noon against the Seahawks. Hopefully wrap up a victory for the Chiefs' kingdom and enjoy the rest of the Christmas holiday.
These games are interesting because the divisional games and even the conference games, everyone knows each other so well that you really never know what you're going to get in that regard because you can have upsets easily because everyone knows each other so well, and we've seen that for years now. But with the NFC games, you don't play these teams hardly ever. And if you can take care of business against them, it really helps you in the long run. Like you mentioned, I know there's no tiebreakers here. I know it doesn't matter in terms of the standings, really, if you're trying to figure out who's going to jump certain teams if there's ties. But if you can win these games, it gives you a huge advantage moving down the stretch when you can have some margin for error. And we've seen over and over again other teams in the AFC West or other teams in the AFC have lost these games, and it's hurt them in the long run. I think about the Bills losing to the Bucs last year. That was huge. If they win that game, maybe they're hosting the Chiefs in the divisional round. So those games are super important. The Chiefs have consistently taken advantage and taken care of business in those games, and hopefully we'll see it again.
So we'll close this way. And I'm going to take you back some nostalgia here, because breaking down the Chiefs' schedule, here's the way it is as we view it, released just hours, a little bit ago. 5 noon games, that's all, 5 noon, and I think only 2 of those at home. Then, and some of those could be switched later in the year, 6 games in the 3:25 slot. 6. So it gives you plenty of time. Like, if you want to worship on Sunday morning, you'll be ready to go. But what this reminds me of, Matt, this is a little bit of nostalgia. Because when the American Football League built its brand, due to Lamar Hunt working those television deals, especially with NBC early on, the AFL was in that 3 o'clock slot. And those great games of all time, basically in there, with this division, with the great rivalries, primarily against the Raiders in those days and against the Chargers. But then when the Dolphins came on and the Steelers came on, much of that was in that 3 o'clock window. And so the Chiefs will own that 3:25 slot with 6 of the 17 games and then 5 on prime time, which allows the Chiefs to have one more primetime game, and I just feel like that's going to come later in the year.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It happened last year. The Chiefs originally were awarded 5 primetime games and then got an extra one. It was the Broncos one at home, I think, was the extra primetime game. 6 primetime games last year was the most of any team. It's probably going to happen again this year. We'll see what happens when flexible scheduling kicks in. But you mentioned Lamar. Lamar would love this for so many reasons, but mainly because the Chiefs are consistently on national television. We have 1 noon game between week 1 and week 9. I mean, if you even said that 5 years ago, people would say you're crazy. So people want to watch the Chiefs, and 3:25 is the perfect slot, isn't it?
Awesome.
You don't have to wake up too early. You can wake up, roll out of bed, and watch the noon games, and then you're on TV. You don't have to wait all day for the night game and stay up late. 3:25 is the perfect time slot, and like you said, 6 times this year the Chiefs are on at 3:25.
So here you are. There you go, Chiefs Kingdom. Here's the 2022 schedule. It's exciting, Matt.
Yeah.
And exciting for the Chiefs, because even then they're kind of running under the radar. Doesn't seem like it, but people aren't expecting the Chiefs to get back to win the AFC West or to get back to the AFC Championship game or challenge for Super Bowl 57. But I think it's fun that the Chiefs will open the year in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, against the Cardinals, and that's where they'd like to end the season.
Yeah, and that's our hope. We believe that they can do that. And I love right now where the Chiefs are, because you're right. For the last several years, the Chiefs have been the best team in the AFC. But I think at times people nationally get tired of that, right? They want to anoint other teams and say, hey, this is the top team in the power rankings, or this is the team to beat in the AFC, even though the Chiefs have been that team for so many years now. But with the Chiefs going under the radar like they are, I think it's going to light a fire under them, where they're going to be like, you think we're gone? We're still here. And I really am excited for this year and to see what the Chiefs do, because if you disrespect this team in the way that they carry themselves, they come back with a vengeance. So it's going to be a lot of fun beginning in Arizona.
He's Matt McMullen, a.k.a. Matt Stats, senior team reporter. Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs here. For you German fans, our ever-growing fan base in Germany and Western Europe, growing as we speak. We talk about them almost every time we do a Defending the Kingdom. Just be patient. We're headed your way in 2023. Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, thanks for joining us. Get ready for the 2022 season. Thanks for joining us on Defending the Kingdom.
10, 5, touchdown! Lock it down! And the celebration begins at Arrowhead.